I think most people just don't realize. They think if I earn $1, I can spend $1, and that's not true. If you talk about a 10% profit margin, that means for every dollar I spend, I need to sell $10. And I think people don't realize how big that ratio is in their business.
Welcome to the High Voltage Business Builders, a show where we interview people committed to making their next million through passive income using real estate, brokering, e-commerce, and beyond. If you're a passionate business builder yourself, visit voltageb2b.com to get in touch now. Hey folks, welcome back to The Call. We are the High Voltage Business Builders podcast. It's Neil Twa here, your host, and I have today a good friend, Rocky. We were just talking about profit, which is going to be one of the things we'll probably cover in detail today. What do you say?
Absolutely. It's my favorite subject.
All right. So talk to us. Tell us a little bit about Rocky. Give us some of your history, maybe the fun things and the stuff you'd be willing to share with us a little bit today. And then let's dive into that topic of profit in business.
Cool. So I'm a dad to two kids. One just graduated and she's working with me in the business now, which is a lot of fun. My son he's got one more year left at university. And it's funny because guess who he's going to go work for this summer for his software engineering internship?
I wonder, who could that be?
One of the big guys, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting for him. And
Nice.
He's done a great job. So, a big part of this is we make profit not because we want money. It's because we want to live life. And being able to be with my kids and to take care of them and to be at all their events is big. And I've been married now for coming up on 27 years. So that's a big part of me. It's a balance. I don't use the word balance. I try to live life in harmony. Different things come at different times. Figure them out. Your business is supposed to serve your life. Your life is not supposed to serve your business. And the easiest way to do that is to be profitable. And then you get to say no to what you don't want to do.
Now, profit is, like we say around here, not a four-letter word. It seems to be, though, that for those who either don't understand or don't like, they go after big corporations or even small, mid-sized corporations with this concept that profit is evil. Profit is not evil. Pure capitalism is evil. Would you agree?
I agree. Without profit, you cannot pay your employees well. Without profit, you can't give back to your community. So that's it. And without profit, you cannot weather a storm. If you came into COVID and you had a good bankroll to help you survive, you weathered COVID, you kept your people employed, you pivoted and did stuff. If you didn't have that, you're struggling. And when you're struggling, your employees are struggling. So that's our goal, is to help you serve.
I just made a post about this the other day on Facebook, and it was literally like in 2022, if your e-com business on the e-com side is doing 10% or less in net profit, you are going to need to raise the bar this year. What are you seeing on your side of the house? My inclination there was literally after 2 years of this and a decline in inflation, obviously at the time in which we're doing this recording, we've seen the largest inflation in history since I don't remember when, a long time. People are saying back in the 80s or farther back. Is that, there's obviously not just inflation, but the increase in cost, logistics, supply chain, and everything that is affected or directly infected. What are you seeing? What are you saying to people right now about what they need to be doing this year?
Number one thing I am telling all my clients is you have to raise prices. I mean, if you're getting hammered, a shipping container out of China, I think, is up 400%. I've heard it's dropped recently and coming back into line. So we'll see what it is in the future. But if you're paying more for supplies and you have to carry it longer, meaning it's taking 6 months to get something that used to come in 60 days, you've got to be able to afford that. And the reality is your employees' wages are going up in order to retain great talent. So you do need to increase prices. Profit's a tricky word. And the reason I say that is, to me, profit is a balance of your owner's salary and pay and the actual profit. So a company might come to me and say, hey, I'm profitable. That's awesome. How much did you pay yourself? Only paid myself a couple dollars. Well, if you're not paying yourself a marketable wage for what you would have to pay somebody to do the job you're doing, then you're not really profitable. So we try to focus on those two metrics together to make sure that you are paying a reasonable wage to yourself and that you are also at least 10% profitable.
At least, right? So what I was shooting for was closer to 13 to 15%. By raising prices or managing supply chain a little bit differently, you need to obviously get that profit mechanism up this year. And you can do it over time. We're still in the first quarter. We're going through the second and third and fourth quarter of this year. You can still slowly and incrementally raise your prices. Don't just go in and if you're selling a product for $39, suddenly make it $49. You're going to find yourself in trouble. But incremental increases are going to need to be there. And I'm also seeing the same thing on our side. The shipping container stuff is costly, but it's actually come down a little bit. You and I were just talking a little bit about that in the green room before we fired this up. We're talking specifically about private label companies with brand ownership, intrinsic value, and brand trademarks. What are you seeing with the rest of the type of sellers in the marketplace right now who are not in control of their own supply chain and pricing?
If you're not in control of your supply chain and you're not in control of your pricing, we're having conversations of how you can be. Because even if you're in a routine business, if you think about a Main Street business who's selling a name brand product in their store, most of them are only allowed, if they buy something for $100, they might be able to sell it for $200, $250 max. And usually I tell those business owners, you're going to struggle. There's not enough margin there to cover the overhead, to cover everything else, to cover your salary. You need to figure out how you can get that if I buy something for $100, I can sell it in the $300 to $400 range, because that's when you're going to be able to breathe and not be so stuck every month.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, it's not just about how much profit I take, because what we do is we recommend a lot of people reinvest their profits into the growth of the business for sustainability, for additional employment, for, as you said earlier, lifestyle and servant leadership. And one of the things we do recommend people do is if they can cash flow this at the level that's required, put the profit back in right out of the gate. First 3, 4, 5, 6 months, do that. Are you seeing, what are your thoughts on that?
So if you are a relatively new business and you are gearing up, or if you're a business that has to, and I do this for all my businesses that have to place larger orders for cost of goods. In other words, it's not, hey, every month we're turning stuff over. It's, I have to buy 4, 5, 6 months of supply. What we do is we tell them off the top, every time you sell a unit, at the end of the whatever period, maybe they do it twice a month or once a month, sit down and figure out what was the cost of all those units and set that money aside, put it into a separate account, label it cost of goods, so that the next time you have to place an order, it's not, I need to place a $300,000 order. How am I going to pay for it? It's, I need to place a $300,000 order. Oh, look, there's $300,000 in my account. I'm going to just stroke a check and go back to bed, right? It takes the emotion out of it. If you're growing, then put 120 or 150% or more aside into your cost of goods account so that you can fund your future growth. It really takes all the pressure off of everything, and you're not removing money from your company too soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way to lower your risk. It's a great way of segmenting out cash flow, and you could use it, like the old wallet trick or the old manila envelope trick. Is literally what we're talking about here, right? Or just separating into separate business accounts. Same deal, right?
Correct. And Profit First is all about that. What we talk about is every single dollar gets allocated to a separate business account with a purpose. So your profit dollars come right off the top. We don't take profit last. Profit is not an event, it's a habit. So we take our profit dollars and we segregate it up front. That doesn't mean you take it out of the company. It means, hey, these dollars are allocated for profit. We allocate money for the owner's pay. If you're supposed to get paid, you deserve to get paid. You are not supposed to get paid last. You're the one who took the risk. You're the one who did the work. We put money aside for taxes, right? We forget the government, in a lot of these businesses takes a very hefty chunk. I don't know how these people don't pay taxes, but all my business owners who are successful pay ridiculous amounts of taxes. And so having that money set aside, and then OpEx, so just your regular operating expenses, that gives you a true idea of how much you have to spend for OpEx. And then, for the types of clients you work with, we're going to put aside money for cost of goods sold so that we always have the funds available to place the next order without having to think twice.
And most of your clients, what kind of business model? I mean, obviously, e-com is a big component of that, but what are they selling in terms of like online, in terms of the spaces you're in, just at high level?
Oh, my people are all over the board. So I've got people in electronics. I have people in clothing. We've got people in other personal care things. So they're all over the board.
It's funny you say those two, because those are actually two that I wouldn't sell in.
I know. And so that's why I told you when I started, I was sharing your interview on my podcast with my clients going, listen to this, would you please? Because we're struggling too much.
Yeah, they are areas in which you struggle. That's it. What you guys, you have to go check out Rocky's podcast.
Yeah, the electronics it's a different space. So they're actually doing installs. It's not your consumer electronics.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is consumer electronics, and specifically in certain channels. If you're going to brand and go off on your own website and build your own influencer marketing machine, et cetera, you're probably going to do fine in electronics as long as you understand the overhead, the customer support and manufacturing defects, and of course, innovations in the marketplace. Now, those challenges on Amazon become a whole different beast, because now you're fighting with top 1% of technical sellers, most of the name brands you can think of, and they don't like to play with others who take their market share. And it's a lot easier for them to take your market share on Amazon. And while you're also fighting that customer service, manufacturing defect, and constant innovating process, you find a lot of times it's race to the bottom pricing on those price points. So that's one of the reasons why I suggest, in case anybody's catching up on that, why you don't get into that on Amazon specifically.
And that's what I love about what you do. One of the biggest things we try to do is reverse engineer the business, begin with the end in mind. And let's face it, some businesses have a model that's highly profitable, and some businesses have a model that we can tell from day one, you are going to struggle. And I'd rather build a business that I don't have to struggle in. And that's a big part of what you do, making sure you pick the right markets with the right products, the right offerings. And that's a big, big help.
Getting started with lower risk, literally, by understanding the product type and mechanism you should actually deploy for success. And clothing isn't one of them, by the way, not on Amazon, just because of its lower margins, race to the bottom pricing. And of course, there's not a ton of traffic, because as you think about why that occurs, and there's a lot of clothing out there. We're all wearing some, hopefully. Some of you listening to this podcast might not be wearing clothes, but we're wearing clothes on the podcast. Is obviously needing influencer or other brand affinity to create that emotional attachment to it. Mainly because returns are very high on Amazon, right? Because the process has been geared to be so easy to pick a product and RMA it. In some cases, you can even test them out for like 7 days, wear it and see if you like it, or if not, return it and not pay for it, which is a really cool thing. But as a seller who's having to manage that product on this side of the house, there's too much logistics overhead and not enough, and a lot of competition that creates a big challenge in branding those. If you can really do great on the branding and build some influencers that can really lift you up in high perceived value, you can do well on clothing, but you're just not going to see the kind of volume most people want to see on Amazon, which is why we don't approach it. And the other one we don't approach is supplements. You'll probably echo this, to some degree. Supplements can do very well off Amazon. I know a lot of guys who run those in funnels and Shopify and ClickFunnels and all these other systems. They go and do their, marketing, upsell, cross-sell, and email and stuff. But Amazon and supplements are a dangerous place to play. We won't get too far into why. Let's just say big pharma and leave it at that for now. So not a really great place for you to play. We played on it a long time ago. But in terms of like what's happening now and what you see going forward, obviously you've mentioned some really great things about profit first, paying yourself first, moving forward. What's another tip you can give someone who's listening today, who's either starting the business and thinking with profit in mind and paying themselves, or someone who's in the middle of the business? What would you give those two people in terms of some additional tips today?
So I think the biggest problem that we have is people overspend. And there's this attitude out there, well, it's a business expense, right? And yes, it's a business expense if it's appropriate. But if you're looking to borrow money, if you're looking to sell your business in the future, having super clean books and really separating what's your discretionary spending from what the business truly needs and having clarity on that, I think is super important. A lot of business owners just have no idea how much their real overhead is and how much of it they're just kind of wasting on discretionary items.
Yeah, it's because I think because they've got so many hats they're wearing, right? They're trying to be the marketer, the business guy, in some cases the accountant person. I say guy, but it's anybody who's involved in the operations component as well as the growth, the startup or the piece. They're all wearing so many different hats. I recommend if you're listening to what Rocky's saying today, you look at how you can outsource some of those components for success. If you don't know your numbers, find a great bookkeeper attached to a CPA firm and get those numbers documented, right? It's extremely important. It's a good operational cost. What you were just saying a second ago reminded me of a conversation I had with my daughters over the dinner table the other day when we were talking about debt, and debt, personal debt and business debt, and separating the two out from each other. And we were, because my 13-year-old is just going to get more involved in the business and a new brand that we're about to launch. She's going to be helping work in that. And you mentioned your kids are involved in it. So it's always fun to get the family involved in these. And so conversations around dinner can revolve around things like profit and debt. And this one had to do with to the questions of them between 8 and 13 years old. Would it be good to if I was a carpenter or if I was a builder of homes and I needed equipment, say a hammer, would that be a good thing to go in debt over? And it was interesting how they all understood the concept of that, because the hammer was a tool that's used to make money, and making money would service the debt. And this is the conversation we have with children at the table.
So this is the one that we really struggle with. The hammer is $25. The pickup truck that needs to be new, that needs to be the biggest, $100,000. The joke we make is whenever you see a trades guy show up with a brand new big pickup truck, number one indicator that they are probably going to be out of the business in a year, because they don't realize in order to pay off that $100,000 truck, they literally might need $700,000 or $800,000 of additional business, if not more, to pay off that asset. And so being appropriate with what you're spending on and doing it in the right way.
It's very funny you mentioned that, because we had a contractor come who's doing some remodeling for a house up the hill that my aunt and uncle have purchased, and I'm helping to oversee the contract of the contractor. And when he shows up in a late 2000 model Ford pickup, which was not a bad pickup by any measure, but it was a good machine, I thought, okay, this guy's got his head on straight. I literally thought that about him when his presentation showed up, and he does fantastic work, but he knows the value of his equipment. And that was literally how we were getting to the conversations of hammers. No, you wouldn't necessarily go in debt to buy a hammer, which then brought up the analogy, should I go in debt to buy a television? Or should I go in debt to buy other things? What's the difference between an asset and a liability? And so, as you're saying, to echo it, a $80,000, $100,000 truck for a contractor is a liability. They may try to reference it as an asset to the business, or they put my sticker on the side of it, or the business paid for it. Or, the business is servicing the monthly debt, which is almost a bit of a catch to what I just said a second ago. The truth of the matter is, unless you're hauling per an hour and that rig is paying for itself on an hourly basis, that's a waste of money.
And that's very true. I think most people just don't realize. They think if I earn $1, I can spend $1, and that's not true. If you talk about a 10% profit margin, that means for every dollar I spend, I need to sell $10. And I think people don't realize how big that ratio is in their business. And even if I spent the dollar and I earned $10, I still broke even. So I don't even have anything to show for it. So now you got to actually go beyond that to actually get a return on your investment.
Yeah. And a lot of times, if you're at the startup phase, it's the question of, what do I sell that actually drives that profitable product, that drives that profitable P&L and that profitable quarter. We are always looking, as you said very astutely, with the end in mind, right? Beginning with the end in mind. And so much of the due diligence up front that many people miss is to do that correct research, that product, that market, that competition, that valuation and perceived valuation of your brand from the very beginning, just to echo some of the comments you've made today, which is fantastic. Folks, if you've enjoyed the conversation with Rocky, it's gone 20 minutes. This just goes so fast when you have such great topics and guests. We could go on for another 40 minutes, but we're probably going to stop on this segment, and I'll invite you to come back. But Rocky, I know people can get you on LinkedIn and other locations, and obviously you have a book called Profit First. Can you tell us a little bit more about how to connect with you and how you might want to reach out to some people or have them reach out to you?
So if you'd like to learn more about Profit First, how it works, it's Mike Michalowicz's book. I'm one of his certified Profit First professionals. I teach everything I do for my clients for free on my podcast, Profit Answer Man. So wherever you're listening, go find Profit Answer Man, and we'll teach you everything you need to do to go implement yourself.
All right, folks, go check out that podcast and grab the episodes. There might be one from another guy on ecom around my name. Go check that one out too. But thanks for coming on, Rocky, and sharing some good insights with us today, man.
Thanks so much for having me today.
If you like this episode, please share it with people you think will enjoy it as well. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for a brand new episode of High Voltage Business Builders.